From an authoritarian abroad to an authoritarian here at home, a federal judge has cited Donald Trump's, quote, own words and actions as evidence to suggest that he was in a conspiracy with extremists to overturn the 2020 election. District Judge Amit Mehta rejected Trump's request to toss out lawsuits by members of Congress and police officers seeking damages for physical and emotional injuries incurred on January 6th. In a scathing 112-page opinion, the judge said that Trump's words show that he and the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, quote, pursued the same goal, and that Trump would have known his words were understood as a, quote, call to action, and that his response to the violence made it all the more plausible that he was involved in a, quote, tacit agreement with the rioters. Joining us now, former U.S. Attorney and MSNBC contributor Barbara McQuaid and Charlie Sykes, who is still here. Barb, this opinion is a barn burner. I could quote from it, but maybe I will. But first, I just want to ask you what you make of it and why it's important.
April Fool's Day 2026, and the joke lands squarely on Donald Trump. The man who spent years wrapping himself in presidential immunity like it was an impenetrable shield just watched a federal judge methodically tear that shield apart, page by page, in a 112-page ruling that leaves nowhere to hide.
The reason it's important is it says that these lawsuits can go forward. Ordinarily a president is able to use immunity to get out from under civil lawsuits. Anything he does within the scope of his presidency is up for immunity. But what the court said here is he wasn't acting as president. He was acting as a disgruntled candidate.
Well, that's hard to say, but John, this is just a remarkable moment. We have been talking about this for 6 years, but think about this. I was thinking about what Ambassador McCall just said about America standing up to China at a moment when we are so bitterly divided. And here we have this evidence that the former president of the United States engaged in seditious activity, that he abused his office, that he was part of this effort to block the peaceful transfer of power. This is an amazing moment. And I think that the positive thing that we need to focus on is the fact that there are still avenues to hold him accountable. I think the great tragedy would be if Donald Trump was not held accountable for his conduct in all of this. So, whether it's going to be the Department of Justice or whether it's going to be the January 6th Commission or whether it's going to be these civil lawsuits, you have to hope that something comes of that, there are consequences to this, and that people are paying attention to what this man did and tried to do to this country at a moment of great peril and of great crisis.
Judge Amit Mehta did not simply reject Trump's immunity claims. He demolished them with the kind of precision that makes it clear this was not a close call. And the core finding cuts straight to the heart of everything Trump has been arguing for years. On January 6th, he was not acting as President of the United States. He was acting as a losing candidate who refused to accept defeat and was willing to do whatever it took to hold on to power that the voters had already taken away from him. The judge looked at Trump's speech at the Ellipse and called it exactly what it was: pure campaign rhetoric from a desperate candidate. No White House planning, no public funds, no official channels. Just Donald Trump working up a crowd to fight like hell after losing an election he had already lost. And then Mehta went even further on the Georgia phone call, describing it as the words of an office seeker begging state officials to flip results, not an incumbent president carrying out his constitutional duties. The Supreme Court handed Trump criminal immunity for official presidential acts, but civil court looked at what he actually did on January 6th and said none of it qualifies. He was not governing, he was grasping. And because of that distinction, these civil lawsuits can now move forward with full force. What this ruling actually unlocks is the part that should genuinely concern everyone in Trump's orbit. Civil discovery is a completely different animal from anything he has faced before. With presidential immunity stripped away, the plaintiff's lawyers now have access to tools that go far deeper than anything previous investigations reached. They can subpoena emails, text messages, phone records, White House internal communications, notes from meetings, correspondence from the days and weeks surrounding January 6th. Every warning Trump received about what was coming, every conversation about fake electors, every desperate scheme to delay or prevent the certification of the election, All of it is now fair game for lawyers who have every incentive to pull on every thread they can find. And then come the depositions. This is the dimension that should keep Trump awake at night more than any other. Criminal court gave him a relatively safe harbor because the Fifth Amendment allowed him to stay silent without direct consequences to a civil case. Civil court operates by fundamentally different rules. Refuse to testify, and the jury is legally permitted to draw their own conclusions from that silence. They can assume he is hiding something damaging. They are entitled to treat that silence as evidence against him. For a man who has survived this long by controlling information and avoiding sworn testimony, that is a level of legal exposure he has genuinely never confronted before. Think about who is actually bringing these cases, because that is what separates this from every other legal fight Trump has been through. These are not prosecutors or political opponents or partisan adversaries. These are Capitol Police officers who went to work on January 6 to protect the institution of American democracy and came home permanently changed. Officer James Blasingame suffered a concussion, broken bones, and crushing PTSD after being beaten in hand-to-hand combat while defending the Capitol. Officer Sidney Himby endured chemical burns from bear spray and sustained hand damage that continues to affect him to this day. And then there is Brian Sicknick, who died in the aftermath of the attack, with his partner now pursuing a wrongful death claim that this ruling allows to proceed. These are real people with documented injuries, medical records, and stories that a jury of ordinary Americans is going to hear in full detail. Their scars will be evidence. And the man who once called them heroes before turning them into targets is going to be forced to sit across a courtroom and face them. The financial history is where Trump's civil record becomes genuinely damning as a predictor of what comes next. E. Jean Carroll took him to civil court twice and walked away with over $88 million in damages after two separate juries ruled against him. He walked out of closing arguments, dismissed the verdicts publicly, threw everything he had at the appeals process, and still lost. Trump University cost him $25 million in fraud settlements. His foundation was dissolved by court order, and he was forced to pay back $2 million misused from charitable funds. His New York business empire produced a fraud judgment exceeding $350 million. Every single one of those was a civil case. Every single one ended with Trump paying. And now he faces a courtroom where injured police officers are the plaintiffs, where the discovery process is about to surface communications from the most legally sensitive period of his entire career, and where legal analysts say the potential damages could dwarf anything the Carroll cases produced. His legal team responded the way they always do. A loud, defiant public statement insisting Trump was acting on behalf of the American people. Judge Mehta had already spent 112 pages explaining precisely why that argument fails. The speech was a campaign act. The Georgia call was a campaign act. Neither qualifies for presidential immunity. His lawyers will appeal, of course. They will drag this through every procedural mechanism available, hoping to run out the clock. But something happened right after this ruling that tells you everything about where his legal team actually believes they stand. The deadline to file an emergency appeal directly to the Supreme Court came and went without them even attempting it. That is not a strategic decision made from confidence. That is attorneys who looked at their options and concluded the risk of a swift and public rejection was worse than letting the deadline pass. The Supreme Court's immunity framework was built around criminal liability for core official acts. This case involves civil liability for conduct that was never presidential in the first place. Those are different legal questions, and even Trump's own lawyers apparently could not construct an argument worth bringing to the court at this stage. So discovery moves forward. Depositions get scheduled. People inside Trump's orbit who have never sat under oath and answered direct questions about what happened in those final weeks before January 6th are about to find themselves in exactly that position. And unlike the criminal cases that effectively ended when Trump won the election and installed a loyal Justice Department, these civil suits exist in a completely separate legal universe where presidential power carries no weight. He cannot pardon himself out of a civil judgment. He cannot fire the plaintiff's attorneys. He cannot appoint someone to make the cases disappear. The tools that have protected him everywhere else simply do not function here. Beyond the legal mechanics, this ruling strikes at something deeper than any single case outcome. Trump has built his entire political identity around being untouchable. Every indictment got repackaged as persecution and turned into a fundraising email. Every conviction became a rally cry. Even assassination attempts became campaign merchandise. The machinery of converting every attack into fuel has worked because Trump has always been able to claim that the system was coming after him unfairly. But a civil courtroom where a police officer describes permanent nerve damage in his hand does not feed that narrative. It destroys it. There is no campaign email you write around a jury ordering you to compensate the people your actions put in the hospital. There is no way to frame paying damages to injured officers as proof of your strength. The strongman image depends entirely on never being made to truly answer for anything. Civil court is specifically designed to make people answer. Every deposition that happens produces a transcript. Every document that surfaces becomes a news cycle. Every pretrial hearing pulls January 6th back into public view and reminds people not just of what happened, but of the specific choices that led to it. Trump cannot rally his way past that process. He cannot appoint someone to slow it down. He cannot issue a pardon that reaches into a civil courtroom. The political tools that have shielded him everywhere else have no jurisdiction here. And here is what the accumulation of all of this actually means for the long-term picture. 5 years after January 6th, the criminal path has effectively closed. But this one is wide open and picking up speed. The officers who were hurt deserve their full day in court. The families who lost people deserve answers delivered under oath. And the country deserves a complete and honest accounting of what happened and who made the decisions that led to it. This ruling gives that process the legal foundation it has been waiting for. No pardon touches it. No loyalist appointment blocks it. No immunity argument reaches it. The door is open, and Donald Trump has no key that fits this particular lock. Drop a comment and tell me what you actually think. Do these civil cases finally deliver the accountability that the criminal courts never managed to produce? Or does Trump find some angle nobody has anticipated yet? Hit the like button, subscribe, and ring the bell because we are tracking every single development in this as it unfolds. See you in the next one. Stay safe.